Hello, everyone. So today I have Stephen. So Stephen, when did you join the program? Do you remember?
I know the exact date. It's June 11th, 2022. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big moment for you, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But just like any of our interviews, let's start this with how were things like when you first started the program, or even how were things like before you started the program that made you do the program in the first place?
Mm, yeah. So before the program, actually right before, um, my partner brought up separation. And so just like everyone in the program, I was in a really dire situation. Um, I was completely, to use like a very common term, blindsided. Um, and we were doing long distance at the time, thousands of miles apart. I was flying back and forth um, between San Francisco and Scotland. Um, I had thought that everything in the relationship was going quite well. And in fact, people would look at us and they'd be like, "Oh, you guys are both couple goals." So um, it turned out that I was, completely clueless to how the relationship was going. And um, so in June, I think we had an argument, and then my partner brought up separation. Um, and then immediately after, I scoured YouTube looking for resources. I came across yours. Um, and within a couple of days, I knew I had to sign up. So I was completely hopeless. Um, yeah, like my life was falling apart.
Yeah. So just to recap for people, so I think at that point you guys were married for 9 years at that
Mhm.
point in time. And I think your partner had to do a graduate program in Scotland, and you guys were living in San Francisco at that time, but she had to go to Scotland. And so this is why you were traveling to Scotland back and forth.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm guessing during that long distance relationship, that was when the whole separation topic got discussed, I'm guessing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Was there a part of you when the separation thing was brought up? Was there a part of you that said, "Oh, this is what happens when we do long distance. This is what happens when like how did you reconcile the fact that you were long distance and the separation? Did that play a role into your thinking at all?"
Absolutely. So, it's just because we've been bombarded with this message that long distance relationships don't work out.
Yeah.
I hear it from friends. I hear that they can't do it. And in fact, I was very confident that we could do it because we had been doing that for the initial couple of years that we were together, anyways. Um, and I felt like we were this like uh, unbreakable relationship that can go through anything, right? Just like hold on to love, and then it's all good. Just remain committed. Um, so yes, because once the topic of separation was brought up, my brain was swarmed with all the mistakes I had done in the past like few months. Like, and of course, that's just like being away, stuff like that.
Mm.
Very surface level things. Um, and what I realized is that it wasn't all these surface level things. It was things that had accrued, in year one, year two.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, like it's stuff that you weren't even aware were problems. You were focused on like the surface level stuff, like, oh, I didn't go on that trip when I was supposed to go on that trip, or we couldn't have seen each other more than how much we're seeing each other right now, etc.
Mhm.
Um, what was so at that moment when the topic of separation was brought up, how hopeless was it? Like what was the reasons that she said she wanted separation? Uh, how certain did she seem, you think?
Um, it seemed quite certain. It seemed quite certain for sure because knowing my partner, she wouldn't bring something like this lightly. Like it had to be brewing for a long time. You know, um, she's someone that puts a lot of thought into this. So I knew it was extremely serious. Um, yeah, I felt very hopeless about this situation. And the surface level was, you know, it was the first reason was, you know, maybe we can't agree on where we want to be. in the future. California could be Europe, could be somewhere else, right? And I took this, I took it to heart. I understood that this was a situation, but for me, I was okay with moving permanently anywhere. And so I was also extremely confused, and my mind was racked with like just trying to dig at all the reasons. I knew there was something more.
Because I think, we always say this, right? A lot of people, when their partners tell them, I want a separation, I want a divorce, they always have these surface level reasons for it. Just, they never get to the root because they want to let it land softly in a way. They will say, oh, I'm going through a midlife crisis. Oh, I need to find myself. Oh, maybe we're not meant for each other, etc. Right? All that stuff is to say, no, I'm leaving you not because of my midlife crisis. I'm leaving you not because of all these reasons. I'm leaving you because I don't feel enough safety to actually go through it with you. You're not the person I want to go through it with. It's kind of the same thing here. So if people are thinking about their situation and they're thinking their situation is somehow unique, different, etc., think about it, right? Think about, is safety the real cause of it? If you had safety to the point where your partner can express things to you, create this deep and magical connection to you, will your issue still be issues? Will the midlife crisis still be an issue if you had safety? Probably not, because your partner would be wanting to spend that with you, to like do it with you, to go through it with you, etc. So I think not only was there this doubt that was instilled to you by your partner saying like, I don't know if we're meant to be together, and then you have the internal doubt as well, which is when you're thinking about your own doubts of the mistakes you've done. Maybe you're not the best person for her, etc. But then you also have the added factor of friends, family, other people, media, everything telling you the story. And what was that narrative, you think, that when the topic of separation got brought up, what was the narrative from external people that was ringing in your head at that point?
External, so the narrative was that, yeah, with separation, with grad school, all these things, people get very insecure when their partners are away from them, when they're doing a big life change with grad school, meeting new people, etc. So the narrative was like, oh yeah, this thing happens. These things happen commonly, and it's just a fact of life. And there's also this element of, yeah, people just grow apart. I was like, okay, but that still doesn't explain what happened to me. Okay, I understand that sentence, people grow apart, but I don't know what that means. And then there was also, there's very little support or belief from people that things could work out. It was, talking to some friends, I would think maybe like 1 in 10 would say like, continue working at this. So there was just an overall feeling of giving up. And that was very troubling to hear. Yeah.
Why do you think? Because 9 in 10, you said, would say like just give up, and they would have various reasons of why you should give up. Why do you think people tend to gravitate towards that advice first?
That's a great question. I think people tend to gravitate towards that advice because they feel like in a partnership, if one person decides to leave, that there is something fundamentally wrong in the relationship. And maybe there is, but they believe that both parties have to be committed all the time to make that, the common, it takes two to tango, right? And they believe if one person leaves the dance floor, it's going to be over. And I think they also, it goes back to the victim mindset, which you talk about a lot, which is if someone's not putting in effort anymore, why should I? Why should I pay it forward? I think all these things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what people fail to see too is they fail to see that, like a lot of people think, we become if we get married, if we're together, if we're a couple, then that commitment becomes, it's an automatic thing. It's a given. It has to be a given. And that's not the reality though. The reality is that you're always, for whether you like it or not, you're always trying to earn their love. You're trying to always beat their competition because your partner has only one life here, right? She has one life with her bucket list of what she wants to do with her life, or what she wants to accomplish, what kind of partner she wants, what kind of relationship she wants, what kind of life fulfillment she wants. And she chose you initially because she thought that you were the person who can give her that fulfillment. But that doesn't mean that that bucket list goes away. She's still going to be thinking about all that stuff. So if you stop becoming the person who can become that beacon of, hey, you're the person who I want to go through with so I can fill my bucket list too, then that's when she will have second thoughts around like, maybe it's better to be single. Maybe it's better if I just move away and focus on my work and my studies and whatever it is, and my career, etc. But it always goes back to you. And you would do the same thing too, right? You have your own bucket list. And so for you to force your partner to come to you, despite the fact that you're not making her happy, is you basically saying, no, my bucket list is more important than yours. If that's the case, then it should be no wonder why she wants to leave in the first place, right? So something to think about for people there. Okay, so I guess we painted a picture there of how things are like now, right? So I want people to understand just how awkward and weird and seemingly impossible the situation is, right? Because like here is a couple who's long distance, and during the time they were long distance, separation got brought up. You have friends, you have family, you have people, all these forces telling them, hey, you guys should give up. You guys are not meant to be together here. If it's this hard, then forget it. And it seems like she was also pretty dead set on the separation as well. How difficult, how sparse was communication at that point in time?
It was really difficult. I flew back to the Bay Area, and it wasn't even very clear what our communication would be. We would send texts, like just making sure that I arrived like safely on the flight. But getting into a rhythm of talking, it was very sparse. Mm-hmm. Especially after talking multiple times every day for the past 9 years. So it was extremely different. Yeah.
And I think there's also a now added politics of, okay, can I bring up the difficult conversations? Can I bring up the tougher topics? Can I bring up, or like, should we just talk about just day-to-day things, day-to-day items, like how was your day, etc. But can we really get to the root of things? And it seems like there was a lot of politics there in the beginning, especially. And guys, like, Stephen's story is one story where he had a little bit of contact. But we also have many stories, guys, where people didn't have any contact, right? So a lot of people like to look at your story, for example, or any of my client stories and say like, well, let me figure out the exceptions of my case. But it's like, no, you can't just look at this one case. Look at all the client stories and say, if you can find exceptions to all the client stories, then yeah, your situation is unique, but I've never seen that. I've never heard that before. All right. So just understand just how dire this was in the beginning, but let's contrast this to how things are like now. How has things changed? It's November 9th, 2022 right now. So this is about 5 months after you joined?
Yeah, yeah, it's about 5 months. So right now, we have regularly scheduled calls. And it's gotten to the point where we're actually enjoying the calls. It's being fun again. And I think one really interesting thing is you're talking about like exactly like in the beginning I was scrambled. I wasn't sure what to talk about. And we have these we have the top layer reasons for separation. Well, I learned that through having the difficult conversations in the program, I was actually able to lead conversations in a way where I was proactively discovering the reasons for the breakdown in a way that my partner didn't even know. So there have been multiple times where she has said, what you're saying, I didn't even know this was a reason. And so it's almost like, I feel like this must be the situation. I always thought that with like divorce or separation, people just knew, they have all the reasons, they know. But now I understand from the program, it's an emotional response. It's emotional dead end.
Yeah. I want to talk about that pretty deeply in a bit here. But basically, this, as I catch up on your posts, etc., it's more of, I think, conversations are going much, much deeper now. Of course, you guys are still doing long distance because she's still doing her program. I think you said she's finishing in June, right, of next year. You guys are planning, I think you guys are she's suggesting planning trips together after her graduate school is over. So talks to you all the time and says, hey, basically, you're better than therapy. All these things. So, I mean, this is night and day compared to how you were before, right? Like, how did this compare to your initial expectations of what was possible when you first joined?
Initial expectations when I first joined.
What was your expectation when you first joined anyway? Did you have any?
I honestly had zero expectations. I was very hopeless. So I said, okay, let's do this. But I had no clue. I had no clue about anything that I've been learning. Zero. Absolutely zero. So I had low expectations, but I had a lot of fear, like, this is the end. Yeah.
Okay. So you came in thinking, okay, this program says it will help. I don't know. I'm skeptical. I'm doubtful of that. Everyone tells me the ceiling is this high. But just give it a shot, kind of thing. So you give it a shot and you realize that, ooh, let me blow through that ceiling, right? I do want to talk about the moment when you applied for the program, because there's a story there. So right now, we're only accepting maybe less than about 7 to 10% of people who apply. We just don't have room because unlike other programs, we don't just take anyone's money. They have to basically fit the culture. They have to be coachable. They have to have the right attitude, because the worst is, I don't know if you've joined other programs before, right? But if you join other programs, they take anyone and you can just see and feel that negativity, that confusion, the uncoachability. And it just creates a really bad environment for people like you who actually wants to grow, who actually wants to play at a very high level in a very, very bad place. If you could look back, like, what was wrong with your application? Because if I understand, you scheduled your application and you got kind of like a bit of coaching from Jason Newman at that point in time, right? Tell me the story there.
Yeah. So I think in the application, they're asking for several questions, and in the prompt, it's like, answer it thoroughly, do your best, right? This program is selective. And I think I was just in such a bad mental state at that time. I was abroad at that time, things were crumbling in my life, and I was just like, I knew instinctually I needed this program, but I wanted it like now, right when I landed. And so I filled out the application, like, with my brain was going haywire, and I was just filling out like 2 to 3 sentences. And then I got an email from either you or Jason about like, hey, we need, we can't do a full application call. We actually need to check out if you're for real, if you're committed, because based on the quality of these responses, it's not really showing up there. But that was also a signal that I knew that this program was legit. Yeah, that it was going to be for real. Yeah.
What's interesting too. What's interesting too is like the different ways people interpret our process, right? Because some people, they interpret our process of like canceling calls sometimes, redirecting you to a 15-minute call, asking this very hard-hitting questions, even sometimes outright rejecting you and say, I don't think you're ready for this yet, right? They see that as a bad thing sometimes, where they get upset, right? It's like, how dare you say institute anything? But what's funny to us is, we always want to get people who are coachable, who we can work with, who are ready to empty the canvas, who are humble, who have a good attitude, who are willing to aim high, not falling for the fact that their situation is unique, illusion, etc. And how people respond to when their application gets canceled tells a lot about what their mind space is at, right? Because in the survey, people can always lie and bend the truth, say whatever they need to say to appeal to us, kind of thing. But it's really hard to fake actions. And it's an example case. It's like whenever we do the action of, hey, let's cancel the call. I don't think you're for real. Some people get all crazy and their pride shows, their lack of humility shows, the lack of coachability shows, right? And they never realize that, though. They never realize, like, dude, you just showed us all your cards. I'm glad I didn't take you in, kind of thing. It's really funny how that happens. And the fact that you took on like a much better attitude to that, that was everything to us. That told us everything, right? It's like, I don't really care about what you say in your survey anymore. I care about how you respond there. I care about the fact that you're coachable. That to me is like everything. So, but now that you're in the program, right, and you see the kinds of people, like you've made a lot of connections, you've made a lot of friends in the program. You've made kind of like your own like mastermind group here. How does that feel? Like how much do you think that has contributed to your growth, to your success, etc.? Just being surrounded by other people who are trying to play at a high level too.
It's been essential. It's been essential. Because I knew going in, if you look at online resources, they'll say divorce or separation, it's one of the most isolating things. And then you'll try to find some support groups, but most of it just falls into victim mindset. And being surrounded by people who are very successful in what they do, very motivated, but still in a very dire situation, oftentimes, in much worse situations than I'm in, but seeing them work every day, being able to support each other and actually try to be the best version of themselves, it's been incredible. And like I think some of these people will be lifelong friends too. Being surrounded by people who are in the same tough spot, but still charging forward in a way that's very different from the norm, it's very important. Yeah.
You mentioned something very interesting there, which is, so first of all, like the people who enroll in this program, they are, I would say, accomplished people like yourself, right? You're accomplished professionals. Like you've done quite well at work. You've done quite well in many different areas of life. But then you have this one area that seems to be a very dark spot. And so what you're saying is, it's interesting to me how there's so many people who are so accomplished, who accomplish so much, but then they come to this program with such a humble approach. And they work so hard at changing so much of their softer skills, I guess, in this department of their life that allows them to create like a really fulfilling relationship, right? And so just seeing people like that, well, first of all, think about how rare that is. You can find that in other places, like you said, like a lot of other places, people will just play victim, tell you all the wrong advice, etc. But just to see people playing at that level, it kind of makes you go, wow, that is my competition. Like, it's almost like you've been playing junior league the whole time, and then now you're in the NBA or in the MLB, and you're like, oh, they practice very differently. They think very differently. They have a different work ethic. They're executing very differently. They just are operating differently. And I think once you're exposed to that higher level ceiling, that's when you start questioning yourself a lot more. That's when you start asking different kinds of questions, finding different kinds of answers. And that's when growth really, really starts. That's, I think, the major value of this program beyond just like YouTube, etc., is like, you need to understand just how the ceiling can go, what being irreplaceable, what being high value actually means, right? Is that kind of what you're saying too, Stephen?
Exactly. It's exactly what I'm saying. Being surrounded by people that show you how much better you can become, that's very important. And I think in common terms, I talk to some of these people, I'm like, wow, if they were single, like I would recommend anyone to just because of how special how much they care. Yeah.
Jason Newman. So we recently had dinner together, and I asked it because like the reconciliation took about a year and a half, so it's been a long time. And I asked, or someone asked his wife, right? What if in that year and a half, before you were able to like come back, Elena, what if Jason found someone else? And then she said, no problem. I'll just contact Jeff and just tell him to hook me up with some of the guys there in the program. Yeah. But I think the other thing that's interesting too is like when you're exposed to people like that, right? You really get to see like, okay, when people play victim, right? Their advice is always very easy to take because it feels good in the short term. Like if someone telling you, oh, you guys are not the right fit, oh, it takes two to tango. If she doesn't want to try, then it's not really your fault. If this is the case, then it's kind of hopeless. You should move on. You deserve better than her. All these things. Like it's like basically pinning the blame on other people. That is very easy to take because it doesn't require work from you. It absolves you of the work. But people who do that, who think like that, if you look at their relationships, it's never actually good. So the only good they get is a good of ego, a benefit of ego, but the actual outcome sucks. Well, people in this program, you see the opposite, right? They're taking the different kind of hard. They're saying like, no, I'm embracing this hard right now, which is I don't want to play victim. I want to take it upon myself to look at my own shortcomings and reverse that negative cycle. It seems like a hard thing to do. It seems exhausting in the short term. But you see those results and you go, okay, if I just look at the results here, victim versus non-victim, obvious who I want to follow. And so I think it creates this sense of belief and trust in playing non-victim, going against the grain. Would you say that was crucial for you too? Because I know that was crucial for me in my journey.
It was definitely crucial. I mean, anytime someone would give me victim mindset, like, oh, you can find someone else that fits you better, or you're perfect the way you are. There's no need for self-improvement. The hit would almost be like a drug. It'd be like, oh, I can relax. But instinctually I knew, come on, I messed up something, the most important part of my life. There's something in me. There's some challenge. I need to be a different person. And that's going to be an extremely hard road, but it's the worthwhile one.
Yeah.
And you're right that going through it, it's helped rebuild my confidence bit by bit, and I'm still going through the program. Like you said, it's a lifestyle. So it's going to take time, but the longer I stick with it, the more I'm realizing, oh, this is the way forward for me, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So you say it took you a while to realize that this is the way forward, right? So let's define then. What is the way forward? We talk about the 5 pillars and the internal shifts, right? How do you see now all the pillars and all the internal shifts kind of working together to create this concoction that allows you to get to that outcome?
Yeah. I think the first step was rewiring all these unhelpful paradigms that I had instilled in me, by myself or society and all these things. The way forward was definitely taking a hard look at everything. I believe, I've been successful in my career. I thought I provided like all these things and understanding that, okay, in a long-term relationship, in a modern relationship, that doesn't cut it. That doesn't cut it anymore. Having to come to terms with those truths, that was already a hard step. But actually having to day by day reprogram my mind to believe it, to internalize it, that was very difficult. And that was definitely the first step. And this program, there's so many paradoxical things, going against what other people would assume is just common advice. Just doing the work, the daily practice processes to really instill that in me. That was part of the hard road forward. And in terms of the pillars, right now I'm focusing on emotional safety, psychological safety. Understanding that those are at the root of the breakdown and building those up and understanding how long it takes to build those things up. They're very easy to destroy, but very hard to put brick by brick, and very easy also to miss a certain crucial brick.
Yeah.
So it really is like rebuilding a new relationship from scratch. The old one's dead.
Yeah. So it's interesting because like when you talk about people not being able to fully trust this process, I think there's two stages to it. One is a stage of I need to understand all the different subconscious toxic paradigms that have been programmed in me. And I think the hard part there is not really I like someone telling you what those toxic programming is, but more of you realizing for yourself that you have those toxic programming. Mm-hmm. For example, like victim mindset. For example, perfect product illusion, thinking you're so perfect and what it means to be high value man. What relationships are, takes two to tango, the soulmate delusion. We talk about this too. I mean, there's so many toxic paradigms, the paradox of logic, the paradox of change, untetheredness, urgency, unique circumstances illusion. There's so many, right? Can you even cut through your conscious mind and dive into your subconscious mind to realize all the different subconscious ways that you have fallen for those things? If you cannot see it, if you cannot see your blind spots, then forget about the other side. Forget about trusting anything because you haven't even taken off the old clothes in a way. Forget about putting on the new kind of thing. What was that experience like for you? Just finally being aware of all these things that you've been unconscious about for so long, that you've unconsciously believed for so long, that is affecting your life, that is affecting your actions, how you think, how you feel in a massive way. What was that progression like for you in the program of how you slowly realized that and reversed that stuff?
Yeah. So I think it started with, watching the modules, and instantly with the modules, while all the lessons were very different than what I've been taught in life, instinctually it just made a lot of sense. And the first, I don't know if I'm answering the question as directly, but the first moment I just remember, it was like a disturbing thought. I was like, okay, I've just lived through life believing these things, believing that like the common knowledge, and it's created so much havoc. And now I'm in this big hole. So at first it's extremely jarring. It's almost, we talk about self-flagellation, like not beating up ourselves for what we didn't know. I had to struggle a lot with that. And then after it came more of an acceptance stage where I'm like, okay, well, the only way to go forward is really, really to change how I perceive things, change how I look at things. And that comes with like, that just had to do a lot of hard work. And it was very painful at times, but, just had to keep it up daily. And the good thing is that there were people around me doing the same.
Yeah. I think too, the challenge for me as a coach, right, is like, this program is not like a technical program. Meaning like, if you learn technical things, I can show you like a mathematical proof or lines of code or even physical structures to where I can say to you, like, that's the weak spot. Can you see it? Yeah, I see it. We both see it. Great. Right. But with this stuff, it's like, there's what we know subconsciously, and then there's like mountains and mountains of BS. And you see this with people sometimes, right? It's like, we say, dude, you're falling for the victim mindset. I tell you, you're falling for the big victim mindset. You're falling for the self-flagellation illusion. You are playing at a very low standard. Then what do? You instantly tell me justifications of how, no, I'm not playing for the victim. I'm not playing the victim. How dare you say that? Right? I'm not self-flagellating. I'm doing everything correctly. I mean, you see this in the program even with newbies, right? Newbies are like, dude, how can you be asking these kinds of questions? And then they say, I don't see anything wrong. And so that's what you know, and then there's all these like BS, self-justification, etc., that you use as a defense mechanism to push it all down. And the reason why it's a blind spot, it's a subconscious programming in the first place, because you allowed it to become one. You've just like accepted this to be true, and you just said, you know what, sweep it under the rug. I don't want to think about it ever again. Mm-hmm. That's the hard part, and that's like the most challenging part about my role as a coach is like, how do I allow people to cut through that BS and into the core of it, and humble themselves. And I think there's a couple of ingredients there. One is you have to be surrounded with people who have done that, right? So you cannot shroud this in under a lot of like unique circumstances, like, oh, my situation is a bit different from theirs. My case is a bit different. My story is different. My life is different. They don't know all these things. You have to realize, like, no, everyone has that thing. Then I think the other one is like also seeing the different standards that people are playing at. So if you see people are playing a very different standard, you look at your own standard and you naturally get embarrassed by it. And that embarrassment creates agitation that makes you ask different questions. And number three, the different questions you have to ask is more empathetic questions, right? So for example, like one of the blind spots people have is, let's say victim mindset, right? We always say, if you want to see Jesus on a piece of toast, you will see it. So if you keep asking the question, how am I not a victim? You will find a million reasons of why you're not a victim. Mm-hmm. But you will never find the million reasons of why you are a victim. Mm-hmm. Right? But if you change your question to be more empathetic, then you can find that. Same thing for safety. If you keep asking, how is my relationship safe? How is my partner feeling safe? How am I creating safety? You'll find so many reasons. But if you ask the opposite, how am I not creating safety? Then that will change everything. And that's why you got blindsided, right? Because at first, you were asking the wrong kinds of questions there. You were asking, how is my relationship amazing? Not, what could I be doing wrong here? What could I be missing here?
That's exactly what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I was asking, what were all the good qualities I was bringing, instead of just, being blind to a lot of failures.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to recap this point, guys, it's be careful of your blind spots, right? Like, if you are not getting the outcome that you want, if you're not getting the life that you want, then you have to really be honest with yourself and go, do I have some blind spots? It's easy to hide under the excuse of blaming other people, blaming your partner, blaming just, oh, it is what it is. We're just not meant to be. It's easy to do that. But if you do that, you're just adding more and more dirt under your blind spots, basically, and bury your blind spots even more. What you need to do is to really humble down, ask different kinds of questions to really get to your blind spots, find the root causes, find the root issues, and really work on the root issues, right? Now, the second thing also is what prevents people from really surrendering to the process here is, okay, once you realize your blind spots, once you realize all the bad ways, all the toxic ways you've been thinking, and all the subtle ways you do it, the nuanced ways you do it, then you need to put on the new clothes. So the old one is like taking off the old clothes. Now you're naked. Now you have to replace it with, okay, if that doesn't work, what do we replace it with? And that took you a while to really trust and believe too, yeah? I would say.
Took me a long time to trust and believe, because I think, based on my career, where I am, it's all, people are always looking for evidence, right? External manifestation, always for evidence. And a lot of these principles, they take a lot of time to sink in. And so it takes a while to trust it. But in the group, with thousands of people, after being here for half a year and looking at many historical posts, there has never been a post that I've come across that has said, oh, I found this small gotcha in the principle where it didn't work, And so over time, through my own actions, my friends in the group, their own actions, and also just never seeing any of the principles violated, I learned to trust. Yeah.
It's interesting because you know, a lot of people say, for example, like, Jeff, you're not a scientist, you're not like a researcher. What do you know? But then I always say to people, do you know how many people we have in the program? So take whatever studies you have in mind right now that guides your principles and thinking about how relationships should work. Look at the studies and look at how big is their sample size. I guarantee you their sample size is no bigger than a few hundred. Our sample size is a few thousand. So if you want to talk about validity and how things are studied, this is it. And we also understand like a good theory is meant, like, what determines a really solid theory versus a really soft theory is how much it can be unproven or disproven. So if you have a theory, yeah, someone can prove it 5 times, but if it can be unproven 95 times, not a very good theory, right? But what we're saying here is like, yeah, you go into the program and you realize I see a lot of confirmations of the theories, but I don't see a lot of like the theories being negated. And that's, I think, what fuels your belief too. Eventually, it's like I cannot see the antithesis. I cannot see life just not following suit. I guess
I haven't seen any principle negated, and these are including the hardest principles, at least for me, to instill. For example, your partner's always watching. Well, I didn't believe that at the beginning. I was like, okay, how can she be watching? She wants something new. Maybe she wants to be with someone else, or she wants a new life. Why would she watch?
Mm-hmm.
But for months and months, this has just been proven true. Not just by my case, but just everyone that is sharing their stories and doing the work to actually see the evidence.
Yeah. What would you say to people who are still struggling with that? Who are still like they look at what I say and they sometimes even look at the evidence, but they can't really make that leap of faith to go like, okay, how much evidence is enough? And after I get this much evidence, I'm going to go all in. What do you think is the other blockers to that?
I think one blocker. Well, there are a lot of blockers to that. Some of that was like the external society's message, which kind of goes against some of the principles. Others that getting out of the victim mindset and just realizing that the way you've been doing stuff has been wrong the whole time. It's very confronting. It sucks for me to hear like, 34 years of my life, like,
you wasted it.
I was thinking I was I think I was bedridden for one day just thinking about that, maybe multiple days. So that's accepting the truth of that is very difficult. What I would suggest to them is that there's no downside into trying something new or testing this principle that you don't believe. In the span of life, if you test it for 6 months, that's still a short time. And if you see that it doesn't work, that's okay. But what if it does work and people are telling you the whole time, you have to try.
Yeah. Because like just try, because the trying that you've been doing all this time hasn't got you anywhere, right? So stop holding on to your old ways of doing things and start holding on to a new way. Now, the question is like, which new way should I try? Well, look at things objectively, right? It's like, do you want something that literally unanimously people are saying, no, this is the way? Or do you prioritize something that people say, oh, I want to go to a therapist because they have some credentials? Right? Do you base that decision on, oh, who has the biggest audience on YouTube? I mean, what do you base your decision on? Outcome, results, credentials, or popularity? What is it? Right? And here we're saying like, I don't really care about the popularity side. I don't really care about the credential side. I care about results. And if you want some results, take a look. Like you're drowning in it kind of thing. But you said also something interesting. Your partner's always watching. And along this lines is like separation or divorce is really not the end. What changed your belief on that? So I know you talked about how you saw how it wasn't only true for you, but also true for so many other people as well. What did you see to make you change your mind on that?
Yeah. So I'll just talk about my case first, but the way I discovered this is that every time I strayed away from the processes or principle, my partner basically gave a signal, gave evidence that she was watching. It could be she knew when I wasn't following the principles and process of this program, and it would lead to her basically saying something to the effect of like, hey, you stopped doing this. And I was not even aware that she was picking up on it because I was facing a lot of resistance, right? It wasn't like I was getting like, okay, yeah, Stephen, the way you're growing is really nice. I really, I want to get back together. I wasn't getting any of that. But once I stopped doing what I knew I should have been doing, it was like, hey, you stopped doing this. I was watching.
It's interesting because like when I talk to my partner, when I talk to Jason's partner, when I talk, seems like your partner too, or anyone's partner that I talk to in the interviews, initially they always think that a partner was never watching because they say that your partner says a lot of very, very hurtful things at this point. They say, I don't love you. I never loved you. I never even cared. I settled with you, right? I don't want to see your changes. I don't care about your changes. I don't give a shit. There's no chance of reconciliation. Don't waste your energy. Don't waste your time, whatever it is. We're done. I mean, they would say all these things. But then later on, when they reconciled and then they have this conversation, looking back, they'll go, were you watching the whole time? Did you care at that time? Your answer is always like, yeah, you idiot. Of course I was. Like, we had a long-term relationship before this. I can't just forget about you. Doesn't make sense. But the question goes into then, if your partner's watching, then why does she say a lot of these mean things? Why doesn't she just come out right and say like, hey, I'm watching you. I'm rooting for you. Why do you think she doesn't say that?
I mean, at least in my case, my partner has been rooting for me, supporting me, giving me all the evidence for 9 years, to the point where she was burnt out, right? Burnt out, always had to put me first, right? Emotionally support me, tell me all the things that she needed, but I fail to listen. She can't keep telling me these things without me making the changes for myself, because otherwise, it would just always fall back into the trap of, her always having to lead the relationship, always having to ask proactively, losing all her energy. She wouldn't know if basically I was actually becoming someone new, a genuinely new person for myself. Yeah.
That's a good point. I think the first point is like, one is she wants it to be your idea to actually improve yourself. Not because she told you to, not because she asked you to, not because she suddenly like threatened you to with separation or whatever. It's like you feel threatened and then you have the motivation. Because that's like, saying to someone, well, before I will go in and give you a gift or give you a hug, you actually need to ask me for it. Only if you ask me to give you a gift, then I will give you a gift. Well, you can still give the gift, but the gift wouldn't feel right? It wouldn't feel good. It's like, well, I'm only getting this because I asked for it. I don't know. It doesn't feel, I don't know, something is off about that. It's the same thing here. If you're only changing because your partner asked you to, then it's like, okay, whatever. Like, it's not as valuable. But the second thing I think you're saying too is, if let's say your partner says to you, okay, let me backtrack. Your partner wants to see what you do when no one's watching, right? What you do when you don't think you can have. Like, she wants to see like how permanent, how real, how genuine, what are the motivational, foundational reasons behind why you're changing? Is it because you want me back? Is it because I told you to? Is it because you have this hope of having? Is it because you think I'm watching? Or do you do it because you are? If you do it to have, she knows that that's very conditional. That's very temporary. If she comes back, the motivation for having is gone, you'll go back, which you have done many times in the past. But if you do because you are, that's permanent. And so if she says to you, I'm watching you, I'm rooting for you, then she's creating this environment where she can no longer know who you really are. Because now she's been burned so many times already. She's tried to do so many times already, and she's been burned, and now she needs to make sure. And it's almost like I akin this to like in a science experiment, right? Sometimes you have these experiments where they tell the participants, hey, you're being studied on how fast you can type. But maybe the actual study is not about how fast you can type, but about how you respond to instructions, how you manage emotions upon adversity, maybe. So the study is about a completely different thing than what you're told. But that has to happen because if the scientists were to say, no, you're being measured on your emotional management, then you will suddenly act differently. You'll suddenly change your behavior. And the scientists cannot see now what is your natural predisposition when no one's watching, kind of thing. And it's kind of the same thing too. Your partner, she's not doing this in a cunning way, but she will look at the moments when what are the moments where this person couldn't fake it? Oh, those moments. Let me look at those moments, right? You would do the same thing too, kind of thing. How did the sense of urgency manifest for you in the beginning? So you mentioned when you joined the program, you felt this deep desire to want to do something, now, to want to create contact, to want to say something, to want to pull her back in. What was that feeling like for you?
Yeah, it was terrible anxiety. I mean, I went we were talking daily all the time. We spent so much time together, all the years of the marriage. So, in the beginning, I definitely wanted to try to fix things right away, immediately. And this was even against the program's message that, rebuilding a new relationship takes a long time. Be patient, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think even in the first few months, I did all the things that that were not recommended. I would rush through the program. I would try to manufacture contact when I didn't really have anything to show. I didn't have any new changes. Internally, I wasn't someone different, but I would just try to reach out, and those would blow up in my face. So this was the overall sentiment, but now I'm in a situation where I'm understanding that all of these things take time, and any proper growth is, by nature, it's gonna seem slower than what everyone wants, especially in this day and age.
Yeah. But what made you realize that the urgency illusion was literally an illusion?
Basically through a bunch of setbacks. So anytime I've tried to be urgent, I basically wouldn't really internalize a principle, or my partner would, push back, or maybe contact would be broken, So it was basically anytime I had this anxiety that I had to do something, and I acted on that just to get that fix, something would blow up in my face. Yeah. And also just being around the group, I understood that the people who were patient, putting in the work and being patient, they were also getting the best outcomes, the best results. And it doesn't matter if it comes in a year or 2 years, or later. Having that confidence that will come, it's a very calming place, and it allowed for me to center myself more, balance myself more.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because it reminds me of how a lot of people just will never see just how much of an illusion the urgency illusion is. Because let's say you take the path of falling for the urgency illusion, and you start doing things that are very hunting mentality, very toxic, that actually pushes your partner even further away. So when your partner gets pushed away, that confirms your idea that, see, I knew it was urgent all along. Right? See, it just self-perpetuates this urgency illusion. But then some people manage to take the leap of faith and go like, okay, all these people are succeeding with the non-urgency illusion. Maybe I should try it. And they try it. And when they try it, they realize a few things. One is that their partner never really gave a shit about you being perfect. They never expected you to be perfect right now. What they're looking for is, are you on the trajectory, on the right path to actually improving, to getting to the perfect product? As long as she sees that you are on the right path, you'll be surprised at how long she will wait. That's the first thing you realize. And proving the perfect product is not only impossible, but also it takes a much longer time. That's why people panic. It's like, oh, I'm going to be the perfect product in a month. Oh, right? But proving that you're in a perfect process, that can take weeks. Mm-hmm. That's fast. But that's what you got to focus on. That's the first thing you realize. It's like your partner is willing to wait much longer than you think. Number two thing they realize is, like you said, they're always watching. They're always watching. They may not tell you, and they will not tell you. But trust this, they're always watching because they picked you as a long-term partner at some point. They're humans. They can't just forget about everything like with a switch and go like, oh, delete. It doesn't work like that. Right? And number three is that real changes do take time, like you said. And everyone knows this. Your partner knows this. You should know this. If you come to your partner a month later and say, I'm perfect right now, look at me, come back to me, she would never believe you. Right? Because nobody will know, like people know that you can't get results that fast. And once you realize all three, you realize that this urgency illusion was literally just an illusion. You made it up. You made it up because of your old toxic programming that you couldn't let go. And the only way you can find out if the urgency illusion is an illusion or not is if you actually do it and see it for yourself. But if you never just take the leap of faith, then you will never see it because you'll always be perpetuating that same thought over and over again in your life. And you're going to be further falling into it. And I think it's the same thing for like the special circumstance illusion. I'm sure when you joined the program, there was a lot of you that thought, a part of you that thought, no, my case is a bit different than a lot of the people here. I'm long distance. We've been married longer, maybe. We don't have kids to tie us together, maybe. I mean, whatever excuse, right? Her family, my family is telling us to give up. I mean, what was the excuses that you were telling yourself in the beginning?
Yeah, a bunch of them. I mean, a bunch of them that you listed, thousands of miles apart. You know, people saying long distance relationships don't work. Not having a lot of obligations. You know, no house, no kids to directly tie us together. Basically, all of these things, and also I think I was thinking, oh, graduate school is going to take so long, and after that, who knows where my partner will want to relocate, could be a whole different job. So all these things, I was feeding these stories into my head by realizing it just doesn't matter with how I decide to proceed forward.
Yeah. The way I always tell people too is, okay, take a look at, we have now almost 60 client stories. We have like 15 in the backlog, so 75 total. And all of them are starting out in very, very different situations, very unique situations. But despite how unique they are, they always have the same diagnosis, which is that safety is missing. And why is safety missing? Because of all these internal shifts that are missing, right? If the diagnosis is the same, the treatment is always the same. And that's why we say no situation is unique. Because it's almost like as if you have this pill, right? This pill, you take it, it can cure all the way up to cancer, down to just a common cold. Doesn't matter what you have. Take this and you're going to be fine. Is it weird and absurd for people to go like, well, what about this? What about this? I told you. Doesn't matter. Think about it. Think about why the diagnosis is always the same. Why safety is always the root. think about it. And think about why, if the diagnosis is the same, the treatment is always the same. And the people who cannot just grasp this, who always ask like, what if? I get so many of those questions on YouTube. They never just sit and think about like, is it safety? My wife is having an affair. Is it because she's having an affair? Is it because she's an asshole? Or because I'm kind of an asshole where I didn't create safety and I made her so unhappy. And the worst part is that she's so unhappy, but she cannot even express her unhappiness to me. I mean, how hopeless would you feel if that's the case? You would be having an affair too. Right? Like people don't get that. Yeah, people don't think about that. So people don't think like if you just create safety, you will fix everything. And if you create the prerequisites for creating safety, you fix everything. Right? And it's kind of what we're saying here. So really think about that, guys. Really think about why the diagnosis and the treatment is always going to be the same. It never ever changes. Right? Now let's talk about this journey of you creating safety a bit. Because you said something interesting, which is you became really good at creating opportunities to start conversations that allowed you to allowed her and you to both reveal what are the blockers to safety. Once they're revealed, you healed it. And that's how you progressively heal the relationship. So let's first talk about the initial part, which is how you even breach or broach the conversation and start the conversation when there is so much resistance, when there is so much, I guess, like the lack of safety, I guess. Yeah.
Lack of safety, me feeling hopeless, me feeling like if I bring this up, it's going to bring up a bunch of bad memories and then it's going to push me further back, right? But following the program, I realized, I think one thing that really resonated with me was the responsibility to heal my partner, right? After 9 years, I put her through a bunch. It was my responsibility to heal her. And many people outside, they talk about closure and closure and closure, and they never get that. And I think this program leads you to that, at least through going through the tough conversations. So my process, I had to make the internal shifts so that I was confident enough to be like, okay, no matter what happens, if she gives me resistance, that's actually a good thing. That's actually a great thing, because now I know all the ways that she sees me, in a negative light, and I can go through each of them, and I can talk about all the examples in the past 9 years that I created this image that I would be that, that bad person or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it was very gradual progress, especially with limited contact. But I realized every time I leaned into resistance, every time I took the lead in explaining the ways I had broken emotional safety, even if the conversation seemed to end in a dud or seemed to end on a bad note, it could be months later. But months later, she would say something like, "Oh, remember what you said 2 months ago? I think you were right." And slowly, like there's been more and more healing through that way. So just trusting in the process, that's helped me a lot.
Yeah. So I think it's a multiple stage thing. So the first thing is like, you actually have to understand how to surgically go in with a campaign or go in with a conversation despite the resistance. And a lot of people don't understand this, right? I got this comment recently. It was very interesting where the guy said, "Hey, Jeff, I've been making all the internal shifts. I've been amazing at it. I haven't taken your program, but I've been amazing at it. I'm like 100% fucking bulletproof. I'm everything. I'm untethered. I'm all these things. But whenever I start a conversation with her, she shuts me down. She stonewalls." So I asked him, like, okay, well, first of all, your internal shifts, by what standard of good are you talking about here? By our standard or your standard? Second thing is, if you are not able to surgically get into a conversation, then that means that you're missing some major skills to actually surgically get there, to learn the frameworks, to understand campaigning, etc. And his response was, no, I'm very good at campaigning. I can turn negative to positive the whole time. So what people don't understand is like, no, like, first of all, the internal shifts are necessary, but they're not sufficient alone. You need both the internal shifts coupled with the frameworks. And we need to define what the standards are for the internal shifts and also the external shifts, right? So the internal shifts, the standard for untethering, for example, it's not, let me not give a shit about my partner. Let me be okay with not having this relationship. It's, can I get my brain so wired to focus on the process that I don't even think about the outcome? It doesn't even bother me anymore. For bulletproof vests, it's not you using your willpower to stay bulletproof. It's, can you not even feel bad when you get resistant in the first place? Like what Stephen was saying. Right? So there's levels here. And if you cannot play at a high level, if you cannot accept that it's a high level, then there's something we can do to coach you. Because like you will ignore everything we say because you think you're already so awesome. Since the frameworks, right? If you look at stonewalling, if you look at gaslighting even, if you look at all these issues that you have, communication issues, and you cannot like surgically get into that conversation, then you're not that good. That's like someone, like an athlete saying like, I can dribble the ball really well, I can move around really great, but what do I do if there's a defender there? Well, then you're not good then. You're not good at dribbling. I don't know what you're talking about. So if people want to understand, like, what do I mean when I say surgically going into a conversation, you can watch the interviews with Michael Wen, for example, or Eve. Those two interviews, we really dove deep into what it means to actually surgically go into a conversation, especially when you're facing like a lot of stonewalling, zero contact, etc. How you can manufacture that. So that's the first stage. It's like manufacturing the contact and knowing how. Then once you manufacture that, you're going to get resistance. But that's what we want, right? And you were saying when you get resistance, it's good because that reveals a lot of the bad paradigms, bad thinking, bad baggage that she's been holding, whether you know it or not, that's been affecting the relationship, whether you know it or not. But now that it's out, you can take it and turn it from negative to positive, right? I have a story here. It actually happened just yesterday, last night. So my partner is planning a engagement party / housewarming party because we just built a new house, and also her birthday party all in one this Friday. And I asked her last night, it's like, are you excited for your party? And she got upset. It's like, why do you keep saying it's my party? This is our party, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. A lot of people would take that and go like, stop dramatizing things. Like, what are you making such a big deal of this out of nothing? But then I went, oh, this is interesting. This is revealing to me something that she's been holding in her head, in her heart, that could tell me a lot of things. And we discovered so many things. We discovered that, oh, she wanted me to actually be a bigger part of the wedding planning process, the house building process, which I haven't been. And she felt like that was because I wasn't a part of it. I didn't actually care about the house or getting married to her. Right. So the fact that I say this is your party is like, this is another one of those instances where you just don't give a shit. You show that you don't really care about this. Right. And so that deep realization came from just that surface, tiny, innocent comment. And that's what Stephen is meaning. Like when you start a campaign, you're going to get resistance. If you have the wrong internal shifts, if you don't have the right frameworks, you will not be able to catch that moment. You will break down internally. You will not be able to handle it properly. But if you have the right both internal and external, then you can catch that in a moment and turn it from negative to positive, right? It's a beautiful thing.
Exactly. And catching the resistance is really tough. Like people can look at the YouTube videos and say they've been campaigning, but honestly, until it's, the program goes way deeper and catching these subtle resistances that people have been missing for years, it's a very tough thing.
Yeah. So we always say to people too, you're drowning in the sea of opportunities. That's what we mean, right? You're drowning in so much resistance because the very fact that you're going to get divorced means that you're getting resistance. You're drowning in it, whether it's coming in a form of stonewalling, gaslighting, whatever. I don't care. But when you get this resistance, you don't have the internal shifts, the internal paradigms. You don't have the frameworks to actually catch it and turn it from negative to positive. You're missing so many things. And then, so the funniest part is when people are getting stonewalled and they say, well, how am I supposed to show my changes when I'm getting stonewalled? Well, the very fact that you said that means that you don't actually understand what it means to heal then. Because the stonewalling itself is the opportunity. Because if I get stonewalled, there's so many things you can say back to that, to acknowledge that, to lean into it. Like there's so many things you can say you don't even know. That's a shame when people don't see that higher potential, I guess. So you guys want to learn more about that? Again, look at the interview with Michael Wen or Eve. This will be really helpful for you guys. Next thing is I want to talk about this illusion of perfection that you had as well. So it took you a long time to realize your shortcomings, I guess. You basically said, like earlier, anyone from the outside looking at us would say we're a model couple. We're a couple goals. Mm-hmm. Why did you feel like you stayed in that blind spot for so long? You had these blind spots for so long.
I think I stayed in that blind spot for so long because I was listening to a lot of these external messaging, like from society, so I work in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. Everyone is basically trying to be perfect here. Everyone has these very high standards, school, job, money, and all these things. And they confirm this bias in the brain that all these external things, they're the highest value, right? And they're what makes a high value partner. And then you hear this term like high value man. And so I think even though I saw myself as a progressive person, I let these ideas seep in subconsciously. I thought I was defending against them all, but I let them seep in subconsciously. And I didn't really realize that all my partner was looking for was someone who could just have the deepest emotional connection, have the most emotional safety all this time.
Yeah. I think let's talk about that perfect person illusion thing so first of all, I think this limits that ceiling that you have again of how good you can actually be, because it limits growth as well. Like if you think you're such a perfect person already, right? Whenever, let's say, your partner tells you, I want a divorce, I want a separation, your initial thought is going to go into, well, I'm good enough. So if they want to leave, it can't be my fault. It has to be something else. Either her, maybe we're not meant to be. But you look at everywhere else but here, because you think like, no, this is already set. Like I'm good here internally. So if people think that, then again, they will never go through their subconscious mind and really see all the really toxic negative paradigms that they've had. Like you, for example, right? When you found this program and you went through it, you realize, oh my God, I thought I was okay. There's so much shit. I opened the rug, I lifted up the rug, and it's like, oh my God, all this shit is in there. Right? Finally, I see it. And then you couldn't sleep for a whole night because you're like, oh my God, I've been living like this for 34 years or whatever it is, right? But that's how it starts. It starts by that seed of I'm good enough. So whenever problems happen, the problems are supposed to teach you something, but it cannot teach you anything because you're thinking, I can't be here. So let me blame it all on outside, right? And actually, if you think you're high value, then it probably means you're low value, because it probably means that you've been covering your flaws under so many mountains of BS. You don't even know what flaws you have, kind of thing. Yeah, thoughts on that?
I think this was exactly the case. It definitely did limit the growth. I could feel myself stagnating because I felt like, oh, I had already done this, provided this. And that's just not the way I should have been thinking in the first place. I should have been more process focused on checking myself, my internal state, what my actual internal value was, how to actually build emotional safety, how to keep keep growing myself and not just looking at some image, because if I keep on looking at image, it's like what we call the finish line illusion. The closer I get to it, the slower I end up going.
Yeah. So it limits your internal growth. And I think a lot of people who, if you if you are someone right now who your relationship is breaking down, right? Like, be very careful of thinking you're good enough. Because people will tell you this. Other people, your friends, especially your family, will say, dude, you're awesome already. You deserve someone better, etc. Be careful of that, right? And be especially careful if this is not the first time this happened, where someone actually didn't want to be with you anymore. Don't play victim. Look within first and say, okay, if I am not getting the results I want, there must be something missing. There has to be something missing. Because if you say to yourself, there's nothing missing with me, the only other conclusion you can have is either you chose the wrong partners, like women suck, the world sucks. Basically, you're saying, this is what I'm getting today, that's the highest potential I can get. That's a very sad life to live. Wouldn't you want a higher potential? So just think about that stuff. And the second thing also is, I think there's nothing that destroys safety more than a high value man or a supposed high value man. Because if you're someone who have a lot of flaws, but they buried your flaws under such a thick mountain of bullshit, self-justification, etc. And so you have all these flaws, but you think you're perfect because you buried that stuff. That's the hardest people to be around. Because imagine if it was your partner, right? Your partner's obviously miserable. That's why she's leaving the relationship in the first place. Whenever she talks to you about what makes her unhappy, it eventually needs to go into, you make me unhappy. But as soon as she says, you make me unhappy, you go, what are you talking about? So if you were your partner, how hopeless would that be, you think? Right?
It'd be extremely hopeless. And I think this played out exactly what you said. If anytime I got some feedback, there'd be I'd get defensive. I'd react just like you said. And this really, really gets to a point where, my partner just feels like she cannot say anything to me.
Yeah. And I think that's why enrolling in the program is so important. Enrolling in this community is important because for you to see through that BS and for you to see like, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. Like, you would not have gotten this from just the YouTube videos. You would have to go into the program and say, okay, let me look at other people. Let me look at the evidence. Let me try to find counter evidences. And I cannot find that, right? All these things coming together to go, you need our tough love. You need people to push you. You need people to call you out on your BS all the time. Because without that, it's like impossible. So, people always think like the value of the program is just the content. It's like, no, the value of the program is the community. It's everything else that surrounds the content. Because the content gets you to logical knowing. Everything else gets you to conceptual knowing, to experiential knowing, right? One is like reading about how chocolate tastes like. The other is actually eating a bar of chocolate for the first time, which beats that book. And that's the difference, guys. And it's also why we're very selective with the people we enroll, because some people are just not ready to be coached. Like you said, like confronting these things are very difficult. They're very painful. They're very embarrassing. They're very shameful. And a lot of people are just not in a humble state or in a too much of an egotistical state to actually do this. And so the reason why we make our application process so hard is that, just like your partner, we're trying to see, what do you do when you think no one's watching? What do you do when you think that the having is gone? What do you do when you get tested? So for your application, we canceled your original one and we said, schedule a 15-minute call. People can say in their survey all they want, like, oh, we're coachable. But if you react badly to that, that tells us you're not coachable. I'm sorry, you're not coachable. You don't even want to understand other people's perspective. You make all these conclusions and you run with it, right? So just think about that too, guys, right? I want to spend the last part of the call and talking about, I guess, going deeper into your experience in the program a bit more.
Yeah.
So I guess first compare it to YouTube.
The program is a lot more rich. I think the content going through these modules, that's like part one, but they go into so much more detail in like a scientific breakdown that just doesn't fit the YouTube format. And I think what is really great about the program is that you have people are basically calling you out on your shit. And I would say that for people that are considering programs that are easier, more lax, and I would wonder if those programs would actually allow you to actually change and build a better version of yourself. I would say, to echo your point on community, the people in the program, they really want to improve themselves, improve their lives, and they really want to support each other. So I think that's something that just would be missing from the YouTube experience.
Yeah. I think again, it's like that the additional things that we add to allow you to see through your own BS in a way, right? That tough love, that community, that support, that almost like as if someone's spotting you right there. They're not holding your hand necessarily, they're spotting you right there. But, I always say too, if you find a program that doesn't challenge the crap out of you, make you uncomfortable, then you just got scammed. If it doesn't push you outside your comfort zone, if it doesn't challenge what you know today, doesn't make you question yourself, doesn't make you doubt yourself, then you just got scammed. Because they're just telling you what you already know, what you want to hear, which currently is not going to give you the results that you're looking for. But I also understand it's a very hard balance for coaches to find, because coaches are rated on how pain-free, how comfortable the journey is, right? Like if I give someone tough love and they don't take it well, they resist it because they want to hold on to their old self, because it's very uncomfortable to confront this stuff. Like if I gave you some tough love in the beginning and you lay awake in your bed that night and you, instead of saying like, oh shit, I need to change, you went, fuck Jeff. I mean, I risk a lot of bad reviews there, right? But if I just let you in the program and I give you everything you want, I tell you you're doing a great job, make you feel good, even if you don't get the results, I can say, at least the journey was great. You will never get bad reviews, right? You get amazing reviews. So it's a matter of like, okay, do I want the reviews or do I want results? Which one? It's a hard balance. And I think a lot of coaches don't have the balls to actually go, let me tell you what you need to hear, and risk being antagonized in a way, too. You also tried therapy, right?
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So I've tried therapy. I think that at least in my experiences, and I've only worked with a couple therapists, so I know they're all different, but I wasn't seeing. I saw that therapy was a way to almost reconfirm my beliefs and how I've been acting throughout the past decade. It almost at times it would enable the victim mindset, where I would talk about like, oh, stuff I had done wrong in the past, or how I could improve, and there would always be a question of like, oh, but didn't you do enough? Aren't you okay with how you are? Learn to accept yourself. And I think this, at that point, it was very, it was kind of disheartening at times, because, I wanted to go somewhere new. I wanted to actually change myself for the better. And it seemed like the message I was getting was, you're okay the way you are, but for people that want to go to the next level, hearing those messages can also limit growth. Yeah.
I think I heard those messages too when I was doing therapy, and I saw it in my mind as, don't try to achieve to become someone better. Learn to settle with who you are today, and learn to be okay with who you are today, kind of thing. And of course, when therapists hear this, they will get angry and say, like, that's not what we're saying. There's no way. Right. But it's just very evident in the process. The process is it's not about how can I treat, it's about how can I diagnose. Why are you the way you are? I mean, that's the whole point of therapy, is figuring out, how do we get here? Let's look at your childhood. Let's look at all the history. Let's look at this. Let's look at that. How do we get here? But then once we get here, once we understand okay, I am here now. I'm in 2022 now. This is why I'm so fucked up. What next? That's when they break down and they can't really say anything more. It's like, okay, then you're just telling me then how to accept who I am today, how to understand who I am today. But you're not helping me understand who I want to become, what I want to be, what I want to accomplish, where I want to get to. And that's me as a coach's job, is to get you there. Which is why in the program, we don't really look back too much. We look back just so that we can understand our flaws enough so that we can understand where to go next, right? We're always going next. That's it's amazing how parallel people's experiences are when it comes to therapy. Whenever I have these chats too. And you also mentioned something interesting to me, which was this investment was probably better than my education I got in Berkeley, you said, right?
Yeah. I definitely consider the program a better investment, just a life investment than say my degrees at Berkeley or Stanford. These things that people would always say, like, oh, so proud. And I think the reason is that this program is actually a program about how to achieve a life that people want, and it's much more intense than anything I've done, actually. Any studies I've done, any job that I've done, because it's basically trying to help you rewire paradigms that have been shutting down different parts of your life, how to replace those with something that is more productive. And that takes a lot of foundational work that at times can be very painful. And so that's why I'm so glad I found this program. I wish like these things were taught like to people at a young age, in elementary school or something. But
yeah. I had this comment the other day about someone saying, like, the more testimonials that I see from you, Jeff, the more I realize that this is not a program about saving relationships. This is a program about self-development. Mm-hmm. And then he went on to say, I don't like that, because I want to save my relationship. And my response to him was, if you find a program that simply tries to save your relationship, run far away. You just got scammed, and you're about to get scammed. If you want to fall for that, go ahead. But if you want, and maybe one day you'll realize the value of internal shifts, because people don't have relationship problems. People have problems with the self that reflects in their relationship. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you look at it, for example, like, well, why is your partner having an affair? What does she want to divorce? What does she want to separate? Because there wasn't any safety. Okay. Well, why couldn't you have created safety? Well, one is because you don't have the frameworks, which will teach you as a skills. But the bigger part of it is you have a lot of internal shifts that are missing here. You are thinking and doing and feeling about your relationship in all the wrong ways. And you're guided by all the wrong paradigms. And those paradigms are not just affecting your relationship, they're affecting everything else, every part of your life too. Mm-hmm. But the hard part, I think, for people is that this program teaches people how to fix their subconscious mind. Meaning that before you fix your subconscious mind, you're not going to understand what it feels like to fix your subconscious mind. It's not like a business program or some mathematical program, technical program where I can say, okay, if I do this program, that is my finish line. Because I can look at it, I can see it, etc. I can feel it. I want that. Right? Like, before you joined this program, you had no idea what it feels like to not play victim, what it feels like to not fall into the FA bias, what it feels like to be untethered, what it feels like to be bulletproof, what it feels like to understand how to do the frameworks, what it feels like to steer your relationship. You had no idea how it feels like because you've been living in that blind spot. So a lot of people who never do this program, they will never get to understand what the fuck they just missed on. They always think like they always go on life and going like, oh, my life is good enough. Only the people who have been through there at the summit will go, oh my God, I can't believe I used to be down there. I cannot believe it. But you have to go through the progress, the journey to even feel that. If not, you will never feel it because you don't know what you don't know.
That was exactly my experience. The whole program just showed me how much I don't know. And it's been very liberating on that front because I felt very stagnant in life for the past several years, especially with COVID. And this program, it's a bit scary because now there's a whole wide world out there, but it's been very liberating on that.
Yeah. So just last minute advices from both of us, right? For me, it's, guys, remember that you only have one life. You have one life to make an impact here, right? You have one life to leave a legacy to your kids. You have one life to make it as fulfilling as possible. We're coming here trying to tell you like there's a higher life. There's a much better legacy you can leave. And you don't even know what legacy that is. You can't even feel it. You can't even fathom it right now. But if you have one life, wouldn't you want to just make the most out of it? Is all I'm asking. And not only do you have one life, right? You have a limited life. Meaning that if you're, let's say, saying, oh, I want to wait to do this, know that life will keep giving you the same lessons over and over again. Because life is always trying to teach you something. And you will keep making the same mistakes and suffering the consequences of it until you learn from it. Now, the question is not if you need to learn from it. The question is when you learn from it. The biggest shame is when someone is 85. They're about to die. They finally realize all these things. And they go, I need to learn something. I woke up at 85. And 85, you only have maybe like 10, 15 years at most, in a good case, to enjoy what you learned. Don't let that be you. Right? Don't let that be you. Don't wait. Stop waiting. Stephen, if you could give advice to someone in your case, maybe they're doing long distance right now. Maybe they're falling for that situation is special. They're blaming their partner. They want to give up. They want to just take the easy way out.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them?
Say, one, your situation is not hopeless. Two, think hard about which difficult path you want to choose, because all the paths are going to be difficult. You're just in a hole right now. It's fine. And three, make the choice that you would be proud of. Say when you're 85, what you were saying.
Yeah. I want to expand on a few more things there. I want you guys to also look at your excuses of why you don't want to do this. Maybe the excuse is financial, right? At this point of recording, the program is 4,000. Could be more later. We're continuously increasing the price. Maybe your excuse is too much work. Maybe your excuse is whatever. I don't care what your excuse is. But I want you to imagine standing in front of your future self. And your future self is asking you, dude, why the fuck did you not become your best self? Why did you create me? Why did you cause me to even form? What would your excuse be? Is your excuse of financial? Is your excuse of too much work? Is your excuse of laziness? Is your excuse of fear? Does your excuse justify what you will do to your future self? What you will do to the legacy with your kids? What you will do, what you will say, the excuse you give to your wife later on. If you think it justifies that, great. If you don't think it justifies that, then don't wait. Right? And like Stephen said, choose the right heart. Playing victim, not doing the work, is easy now. But it's hard in the future. In fact, if you're going through a divorce right now, a separation right now, you're already feeling the hard of not doing the work of self-growth. Doing the work is hard. Either way you go is hard. But one hard leads nowhere, the other hard leads somewhere. Choose your heart. Choose the right heart, right? It's like what we say, like, being obese is hard, working out is hard. Which one do you want? But guys, if you want to dive deeper into what we talked about in this interview and dive deeper into the internal shifts, the external shifts, and understand how to surgically just steer that relationship better for yourself, I would encourage you to join me in the masterclass. It's going to be about an hour and a half long. I'm going to put the link down below this video. Join that if you want to learn more. And if you want to apply for the program too, at the end of the masterclass, we'll show you how to apply. Again, make sure you pay attention to the application process. We are very selective with the people we choose. Stephen, thank you so much for dedicating like an hour and a half of your time. We went pretty deep here. We went to some places that are very uncomfortable, I think. And I think I asked you some very challenging questions, which is good. Yeah. Thank you for being so open.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun being here.
Yeah. All right. Stephen, what did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I hope I can give future interviews and continue getting better at this and just progress in the program. Yeah. Doing it daily, and it's been really rewarding. Yeah.
Let's do it. When later on, when you guys are like, maybe when she's done with the graduate degree, I do want to have like an interview eventually with both of you. But that's later in the future. I want to wait for her to finish her graduate degree first. But let's revisit this, like, I guess, summer of next year, yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
You open to that?
Definitely. Yes.
Okay, let's do it. All right, man. Yeah. You have a good day, okay? Have a good morning.
Right, take care.
All right, bye.
Take care. Bye.